A former White House advisor for President Trump says he has been summoned to testify on Thursday to a grand jury. Peter Navarro revealed Monday he has been subpoenaed by federal prosecutors. He must provide them with any records related to his refusal to comply with a February subpoena issued by the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riots. These include any of his communications with former President Trump. Navarro confirmed the subpoena's existence in a court filing this afternoon against the January 6th committee, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Matthew Graves. Joining us now is CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Scott, what is Peter Navarro arguing in this particular suit?
Oh, he's arguing a lot. This thing goes more than 80 pages, and according to our latest reporting, it was just assigned to D.C. Judge Randolph Moss, and the summons have been distributed to the members of the January 6th committee, the U.S. Attorney, and Speaker Pelosi. He's making a symmetrical argument to that through which we've heard from other Republicans in Congress and other critics of this committee, that it's not properly composed, that it's not properly authorized to do its business because it doesn't have the traditional 13 members, doesn't have members chosen by the Republican leader in the U.S. House, that all 11 members, including the 2 Republicans, were chosen by Speaker Pelosi. This has been a criticism and a point of argument in court for a number of critics, but so far, judges and courts have not accepted that argument. They have ruled that the committee is properly authorized, is properly composed to do its business. But perhaps the most provocative revelation is the one you mentioned, Nikole, on page 3 of this lawsuit, where Peter Navarro acknowledges he's been subpoenaed by a D.C. grand jury as well, not just the committee, but a grand jury, and he even specifies the FBI agents banged loudly on his door last week to deliver it.
Wow. Well, what is the January 6th Select Committee seeking to get from Navarro?
Well, they've been pretty clear. They want to know what he said to President Trump and what President Trump said to him, and what was part of the planning ahead of January 6th to disrupt the count and overturn the results. Peter Navarro, according to the committee, has been public with his role in Operation Green Bay Swamp, this plan that they say he has described in his book and in media interviews. They want to know more about the plan, what role or what communication Donald Trump had with planners, and what Steve Bannon was saying as part of this plan. You'll recall Steve Bannon has also been subpoenaed by this committee, has also defied the subpoena, and is now being prosecuted for criminal contempt of Congress. Peter Navarro was subpoenaed by this committee June 6th. The House referred for prosecution for contempt of Congress in early April, and here we are. The committee has yet to get the testimony, yet to get the meeting.
Well, as we both know, there seems to be a very limited amount of time for the committee to get some of these final interviews. What are they doing about it?
The requests to the 5 members of the U.S. House Republican Conference were so late in the game, it's hard to believe they actually expected that to yield fruit before next week's first public hearing. But they're also going without Peter Navarro's testimony, Mark Meadows, the former White House Chief of Staff, without Steve Bannon's testimony, without other key figures along the way, with a recognition that they'll have to proceed with this first public hearing on June 9th, next Thursday, without every question answered, without every piece of the puzzle. But here's what we do know. When those hearings begin, there's been great progress by both the committee and with the Justice Department in securing interviews. The committee has secured more than 1,000 interviews, tens of thousands of pieces of paper. The Justice Department has opened hundreds of prosecutions. They've conducted interviews. So there's been progress, just not as much progress as the committee wants before the first opening hearing.
Yeah, and we just put a graphic up on the screen of a number of Republicans that the committee wants to speak to today. Actually mark the deadline for House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy and Alabama Congressman Mo Brooks to reply to a subpoena from the committee. McCarthy's lawyer has already indicated the minority leader won't comply. So could the committee move forward with holding him and some of these other Republican lawmakers in contempt?
That's a real provocative step. Finding criminal contempt of Congress is already a high threshold and already a rare thing. We saw that when we saw the Justice Department file its charge against Steve Bannon. Can you even find your own colleagues in contempt of Congress? That's where this is new ground, and particularly fertile ground for the courts to look at, because it's already a challenge to recommend a contempt of Congress against a member of an administration. To do it against your own colleagues is truly next level. None of that's going to be cleared up before the hearings begin. Very unlikely the courts would clear that up, even if a recommendation went forward before this Congress expires. It's really more the subject for law students and legal scholars than political watchers or those looking for firm answers in the hearings this summer.
And then before we let you go, what's the latest on the criminal investigations from January 6th?
According to the Department of Justice and their most recent court filings, they have about 800 defendants as of now, but they expect another 350 or so people that are being pursued and could eventually be charged. About 250 of those 300 are for assault or resisting police, that high-level charge we've seen hundreds of others face. This is still a long journey, Nikole. They've made great progress, but we're talking about a prosecution that will span multiple years, not just multiple months.
Scott MacFarlane, my colleague on the Hill, good to see you as always.
Same.